So, I have an interesting Torah portion that hopefully will teach us an important lesson for our lives. And especially as we stand before Gimel Tammuz, we stand a few days before the 26th year of the Rebbe's physical passing from this world. And it's a time that we need to prepare in order that we can have a deeper connection, more meaningful Gimel Tammuz connection to our dear Rebbe. So this week's Torah readings speaks about an internal conflict, one that took place shortly after last week's Torah portion, the story of the spies. This is about a year and a half after the Exodus from Egypt, in the journey of the Jewish people in the desert. And it's about Korach and 250 of his followers who rebelled against the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses himself, and challenged his leadership outright, and saying that what was so necessary about having him as a leader. Now, if I can just get my, okay. Excuse me a moment. This is not what I wanted to share. No, I'm sorry. My apologies. Just head over here. Give me a moment, folks. I somehow lost my screen to be able to share with you, but we will get that back in a moment. Okay. There we go. Oh my gosh. I have no idea what happened here. All right. My apologies, I'm technically challenged, and somehow I don't know how to exit minimize. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, I hope this is coming up now clear. There, okay, perfect. Okay. So, from the beginning of this week's Torah portion, here we go. Korach, the son of Yitzhak, the son of Kohat, the son of Levi, took himself to one side along with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Pelah, descendants of Reuven. They confronted Moshe together with 250 men from the children of Israel, chieftains of the congregation, representatives of the assembly, men of repute. They assembled against Moshe and Aaron, and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for the entire congregation is holy, and God is in their midst. So why do you raise yourself above God's assembly?" This was their claim against Moshe in his leadership. Not only did they object to his leadership, but also to his appointment of his brother Aaron to being the high priest. Nepotism, they claimed. Of course, Korach wanted that for himself. Highly hypocritical. In any case, in today's parlance, that would be called a constitutional crisis. Both sides then participated in what would be the final conclusion to this debate. And what was it? Moshe said to Korach, "You and your entire congregation should go before God, you, they, and Aaron tomorrow. Let each man take his censer and place incense upon it, and let each man present his censer before God. There will be thus 250 censers, and let you and Aaron each take his censer." So each man took his censer, and they put fire upon it and placed incense upon it, and they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moshe and Aaron. The fire came forth from God and consumed the 250 men who had offered the incense. So what happened to Korach? The earth swallowed him up. The followers also after the fire, and we see what had happened to them. They lost. It was very clear that God sided with Moshe, and Moshe was indeed appointed by God as the leader of the Jewish people, and his brother to be the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Now that's, again, a story that many of us are familiar with. But then following that tragic incident, God instructs Moshe a second test that would prove that Aaron, the high priest, and his descendants are the rightful Kohanim. And what was this? It was not about sacrifice of bringing something on of incense or on the altar, but each tribe took a representative and brought a staff that wrote the name of the tribe on that staff, or actually the name of that individual from that tribe, and they laid the staff in the Mishkan, the home of God, in the tabernacle, and overnight they came back the next morning to see what would happen, which one would blossom. And as we have the story here before us, God spoke to Moshe saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and take from them a staff for each father's house, from all the chieftains according to their father's houses, a total of 12 staves, and inscribe each man's name on his staff. Inscribe Aaron's name on the staff of Levi, for there is only one staff for the head of their father's house. You shall place the staffs in the tent of meeting before the ark of the testimony, where I commune with you." Continues the story. "The staff of the man whom I will choose will blossom, and I will calm down, turn away from myself the complaints of the children of Israel, which they are complaining against you." Moshe spoke to the children of Israel, and all the chieftains gave him a staff of each chieftain according to their father's houses, a total of 12 staffs. And Aaron's staff was amidst their staffs. Moshe placed their staffs before God in the tent of the testimony. And on the following day, Moshe came to the tent of the testimony, and behold, Aaron's staff of the house of Levi had blossomed. It gave forth blossoms, sprouted buds, and produced ripe almonds. So with this, we have several questions that we need to answer. One is, didn't we have a very clear indication in the first part of the Parsha with the battle between Korach and Moshe, and ultimately not just with Moses, but Aaron, in bringing an offering of incense, and Aaron's was accepted. He lived on. Korach and his followers died, and in a very obvious, miraculous way, with the earth opening up and them being swallowed up. Isn't that enough of an indication that obviously Moshe is the true leader and Aaron is the true high priest? Why is it necessary another test? What is the blossoming of that staff to add more than the miracle that happened before? And the second question is, what's the significance of the almonds? Why did it sprout specifically that nut? So we're going to bring a commentator from the Hiskuni, who is a 13th century sage, and he gives us an explanation saying that the incense proved that indeed Aaron is the high priest. He is the chosen by God to be the ultimate one to serve in the Mishkan, in the Holy Temple. But that's him. How do we know that it's bequeathed to the rest of his descendants thereafter? Hence comes the second test, and that is that Aaron's staff, which is representing the tribe of Levi, where the Kohanes come from, or a descendant of, that would be an eternal message and a proof that all of his descendants are bequeathed with this unique position of being the Kohen. It's in Aaron's family. This is what he explains, as we have over here. And take from their staff, the test is necessary, and as much as the further quarreled regarding the tribe of Levi, the sign of the fire pans was only regarding Aaron alone as being the high priest. A further sign was needed to distinguish between the tribe of Levi and the other tribes. Okay, so therefore that gives us an indication of why the second sign indication was necessary. But that doesn't give us an explanation of why the almonds. Why would it blossom the staff of Aaron the high priest, into almonds? Why that specifically? Why not something else? So Rashi explains to us, and he says, now, why did it bear particularly almonds? That is the fruit that blossoms quicker than any other fruits. Likewise, he who opposes the priesthood, his punishment comes quickly. So what takes like 21 days for regularly for almonds to sprout. Here it was miraculous. It took lesser time. Why? Because if anybody wants to argue against the priesthood, know that your punishment is going to come quickly, just as this fruit is the quickest to blossom. Likewise, the punishment will quickly blossom in someone's life once they argue about the priesthood. This is what Rashi explains in this week's Torah portion. Now, of course, when it comes to Torah, we know since it's the divine wisdom, there are many and when it comes to the divine wisdom of God, there are many layers, many different explanations, many commentators that give us deep understanding. Some are on a simplistic level, some on a mystical level, and everything in between. And what we need to do is always dig deeper to gain greater understanding and greater significance of the teachings. So, let us dig a little deeper and understand. But we're going to first preface, before we get back to why the almonds, What is the significance? What positive lesson do we have from it? And most importantly, what's the lesson for me in my life? It's not just one of punishment that if I were to, argue that, a Kohen that I know is, you're not really a Kohen. It's not really something God gave to you so that, punishment comes quickly. No, there has to be a personal meaning for me in my life and for you in your life on the significance of this part of the Torah. Because the Torah is a guide in our lives and how to lead our lives. So let us look a little deeper. All right. In temple times, when Jews lived together in their own communities, there was a practice that trumpets would be blown 6 times on Friday afternoon to warn the people that Shabbos is coming. And why was that necessary? Well, because they didn't have a phone that had the perfect timing. They didn't have clocks. And they didn't have a watch back in the day. How could you make certain that Shabbos should be upheld properly? You had to warn the people. You had to let them know in advance. So no less than 6 times was the trumpets blasted in order to remind the people Shabbos is coming. Now we're going to go into, based on this idea, a Talmudic discussion. It's a bit complicated. Try to give it over as simple as possible. And the Talmud speaks about when Yom Kippur comes, when Yom Kippur follows Shabbos. Yom Kippur is also like a Shabbos. First comes Shabbos, then comes Yom Kippur. So the Kohanim, the priests, who have specific duties to fulfill, different on Shabbos than on Yom Kippur, unique service in the Holy Temple. They needed a demarcation of when did Shabbos finish? When did Yom Kippur begin? So that they should know when to switch over their divine service from a Shabbos mode to a Yom Kippur mode. So the Talmud discusses about blowing these trumpets in order to create that demarcation for the Kohanim. But the Talmud argues back and says, wait a second. The Kohanim, they don't need a demarcation. Why? Because the Kohanim, the priests, they are vigilant. They are vigilant. What does it mean that they're vigilant? It says, wait a second. What does it mean that the Kohanim are vigilant? So, meaning they're dutiful. They know their job. They know what they need to do. Talmud argues back and says, well, the Mishnah teaches us that trumpets were blown and sounded in the temple. Apparently, it was for the Kohanim. So the Talmud responds and says, no. Those trumpets in the temple times that the Mishnah is speaking about was not for the benefit of the Kohanim. It was for the benefit of the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Okay, let's take a look at the, let's take a look now at the original in the Talmud. Okay. Here, this is from the Tractate of Shabbos. The Talmud says, and I said to him, you cannot prove from here because priests are vigilant. Remember, what's our question over here? The Kohanim need to have a demarcation of when did they switch from one mode of service to another mode of service. When did they switch from Shabbos mode to Yom Kippur mode, when the 2 days would come together, right? So the Talmud is saying, well, you can't prove from, and in other words, they need a demarcation by the blast of the trumpet. So the Talmud says, no, you cannot prove this from here because priests are vigilant and can be trusted to know this on their own. And there is no need to sound the shofar. Mar Shisha, the son of Rav Chizda, said to Rav Ashi, do we say that the priests are vigilant in that regard? Didn't we learn in the Mishnah that 3 blasts were sounded in the temple on Friday to stop the people from work, and 3 more were sounded to demarcate between the sacred and the profane? Apparently, even priests required the blast to alert them at the beginning and the end of Shabbos. The Talmud answers, as Abaye said in different contexts, that the certain matters were undertaken for the rest of the people of Jerusalem. So too here, these blasts were sounded for the rest of the people of Jerusalem and not for the priests. So on the eve of Shabbos, right, they're blasting the shofar in Jerusalem. There are priests that are in Jerusalem doing the service, but there's other people too. So who the blast for? The Talmud is concluding, not for the priests, not for the Kohanim. Likewise, when it came between Shabbos and Yom Kippur, that there was a blast that was made. So the argument was that was for the priests, for the Kohanim. They say, no, it is not for them. It's for the rest of the people likewise. Okay. What we see over here is that Kohanim had been given a description of something unique to them, which we're going to now analyze this idea. They are, in Hebrew, it's called zrizim. Literally, it means swift. It means vigilant. It means on their game. The Talmud is saying they didn't need the blast of the trumpet like the other people because they're on their game. They have alacrity. They have swiftness. They're always ready. They're always ready to do what they got to do. Always ready to fulfill what is necessary. Now, this swiftness is obviously, we're not talking about the gazelles and they knew how to run very quickly. It's a psychological thing. It's a readiness of soul, vigilance of duty, a great sense of duty they had, and therefore always ready to do what they got to do. That's what zrizim means. So we come back to our screen over here. Let us look at text number 6. Rashi says in the Talmud, priests are zerizim. This phrase is stated in many places. We assume that if they were inducted into service, they must be proficient in the laws of governing temple. Okay. So they're skilled, they move quickly, they're on their game, they act with vigilance. Now the question is as such. Why? What makes them on their game? What makes them uniquely swift? That they don't need the blast of the shofar to remind them to what they need to do. So there's a few different possibilities. Do we say it's an inborn gift? Like the Y chromosome that the Kohen has? Unique to them? Is that what it is? Something that they have inborn within them? DNA that's passed down through all of the males of the Kohens? Or do we say that it's maybe a product of a special education that they got? After all, they did have to train prior to becoming a Kohen, a priest. They had to train. Is it perhaps that unique training that they got that made them full of alacrity, made them extremely dutiful? Perhaps that's what it is. Or maybe it's the gravity of their duty. Not the training, but when they got on the job, they're working in the temple. They're working for God. They're working for the people. There's something very grave in their duty that perhaps that's what gave them that unique quality, alacrity, swiftness, dutiful, on their game. That's we say it today. All right. So if we will look at the sources, we'll actually see that all three are true. All three things are true. In other words, it's part of their DNA. It's part of their training. It's part of their training. And it's also what's unique about the job that they have to fulfill. Being the workers of God in the Holy Temple. And if we look at the various if we look at the various sources, we'll see that all three are indeed very true. What did the Kohanim have to do? They did the service of offerings on the outer temple, also in the inner temple, inner sanctuary. They also had duties of eating the different offerings. Sometimes they would have to eat them. Sometimes the person who brought it would have to eat it. Sometimes they would share it. And there were time limits for what they had to do in eating these various offerings. So let us go back to our screen over here. Okay. And Maimonides says, in text number 6 over here, according to the scriptural law, all of these sacrifices may be eaten on the day of their sacrifice, and the following night may be eaten until dawn. To separate a person from his sin, our sages said that they may only be eaten until midnight. Okay. So you could be So what are we saying over here? The law is that they can eat it until dawn, but the sages came and said, no, we're afraid they may not be careful. So as a result, you can only eat it until midnight. Well, didn't we just say that the Kohanim are swift? They're on their game. They have alacrity. They're diligent in their work. They're conscientious. So why do we need this safeguard? Don't need the safeguard that they should only be able to eat the meat until midnight. Should be able to eat it until dawn because they're on their game. We don't have to worry about them. But the sages said no. So it seems to be a contradiction to the point that we just made, that they're very diligent. They're very dutiful. They're very swift. So the Ramah of Fano gives two explanations. He says like this. We only say that the priests are diligent regarding temple service. So his first explanation is, yeah, they're diligent in their work. This is not about their work. This is about their eating of and consumption of the meat and the various offerings, which is not about their dutiful work. Their dutiful work and Avodas Hashem, service of God in the Holy Temple, absolutely diligent, swift. They're on their game. But that's not what it means. The priests are diligent. It's only temple service. This is not part of the temple service. That's his first explanation. Another explanation, it applies to eating truma, which is forbidden to non-priests, but in regard to sacrificial meats, of which some may be partaken by non-priests, the rabbis don't differentiate between the holiest of sacrifices and the lesser sacrifices, such as the korban toda and the Nazarite ram. Therefore, the law applies equally to the priest and the Israelite. It can be eaten only until midnight, since the law eating sacrifices is one and the same. So the second explanation is they're not the only ones eating. Of course they're diligent. They're on their game. But there's a regular Israelite that also eats from many of the offerings. So our sages didn't want to make a distinction. Yeah, some will be able to eat till dawn, like the priest, the Kohen, but the regular Israelite not. There might be some kind of confusion. So he said down the line, eat only until midnight, even though the priests, the Kohanim, are diligent. So what do we see from this? From the first explanation, which is, what are we explaining here? I want to back up for a moment. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page over here, because it's a little technical. Our issue over here is we are saying that there's something unique about a Kohen, about a priest. A Kohen has diligence. We don't know, is it inherent in their DNA? Is it something learned in training? Or is it something because of their duty in the Holy Temple? That we're trying to figure out. But we know that they're diligent, they're full of alacrity, they're on their game. That's a Kohen, right? So if they're on their game, why is the law that they can only eat the meats until midnight? Something that was instituted by the sages, when biblical laws, they can eat it until dawn. If they're diligent, we don't have to worry about that. So our first explanation was, well, they're diligent, but not in all areas, only in their service, which is obviously suggesting that it's not part of their DNA. Because if it's their DNA, they'd be diligent in all areas. But it's only their environment that's kind of been creating. It's their work. The work is so special. They're in the service of God in the Holy Temple. That's what makes them diligent. That's what makes them swift in their work and engaged. According to the first explanation. According to the second explanation, that what? Really, they're diligent, except because the rest of the Jewish people are not diligent, so they want to make a distinction. So from there, maybe what the second approach we can take as a premise is that they're always diligent, and it's their training, perhaps, that makes them diligent. They have a unique training. The Kohen would have to train for 5 years before he would be able to, or several years before he'd be able to partake in the service. So they learn diligence. They learn to be on their game. They learn swiftness as a result. Part of their, okay. We have two explanations right now. They are diligent because they're trained that way, as we just learned from the first explanation. The second explanation, they have diligence not because of their work. And the second one is because of their training. Do we have a reference somewhere to their DNA? That there's something different about a Kohen that in their DNA makes them different. With this now, we go back to our original question or original issue. Our original issue was about the staff of Aaron, that it blossomed into almonds. Why specifically almonds? What is the symbolism? So we gave earlier an explanation, a negative one, that doesn't apply to us. And that explanation was because almonds blossom more quickly than any other fruit. And this is to teach us that those who fight against Moses, fight against Aaron as being the high priest and his descendants being the high priest, they will be punished swiftly, just as almonds sprout swiftly. That was what we explained earlier. But we need to see the positive side. And what's the positive side? Swiftness, alacrity. There's something special about a Kohen, that they have something unique about them. That is their swiftness. That is their diligence. That's what makes them special and unique. Let's see the teachings of the Rebbe on this. One of the lessons from the Torah portion of Korach, the Torah tells us that the symbol of Aaron's priesthood centered on the almonds. One of the explanations given is that to why God chose a symbol of almonds is because they ripen from the moment they blossom until they become fruit in a brief period. The fruit is very quickly ready to eat. This underscores two ideas. The Alter Rebbe explains that the priests are blessed in this regard. When they bless Israel, the Jewish people, the blessings not only come to pass, but moreover, they are drawn down here rapidly without any delays. The Talmud states that the priests are diligent, that the work of the priest was performed in a manner of almonds. Not only did they do their work, but they did it with alacrity. So what the Rebbe is suggesting over here is that there's a special, unique spiritual quality that the Kohen has, and that is swiftness, readiness. This has been something gifted to the Kohen in two ways. One, in their blessings to the people, that whenever there be natural obstacles for blessings, the Kohen doesn't have those obstacles and can swiftly bring the blessings to the people. And moreover, not only do they have that capability of bringing the blessings in a swift way, they themselves are also swift. As the Rebbe says, the priest's diligence flows from the very notion of the priesthood. Namely, it reflects a reality that is inborn. It's in their DNA, in the very nature of the priest with regard to his service. So the sum of things is as follows. We've delved into the subject of Kohen's swiftness, diligence, being on their game. That's what we've been speaking about, right? And what are the possible causes? So we brought a reference to that. It was attributed because of the gravity of the temple service. The work that they had was, it was very great. It's God's divine service. So that brought them to, when it really matters, obviously we act much more swiftly. So that's one explanation. Second was the rigorous training that they had. And now what we're explaining is the nature of their soul. The nature of their soul is that they are swift. Okay, beautiful. So now we understand the story of the almonds. We understand the story. It was not just because punishment would come swiftly to those who rebel against the leaders, but this is to indicate the nature of the blessings that comes from the Kohen, the unique quality of their soul, that they have alacrity, they have due diligence, they're on their game. Right? What does that mean for me? Torah is eternal. How does that teach me something? That's what about the Kohen. I happen not to be a Kohen, a Levite, but not a Kohen. What is the lesson for me and you? Well, the answer can come from another place where we learn about this unique quality of alacrity, of swiftness. And that is not other than the story of the binding of Isaac, of Yitzchak. We know the story. Abraham took his son, his only son, the one he loved, Yitzchak, Isaac, and brought him as an offering on the altar. And the question that is asked by many, what was the great accomplishment of Abraham? There are many Jews throughout the centuries that offered their very life and gave up their lives for God, for their Judaism, not to forsake God and their Jewish path. What was so special about Abraham that he is lauded for doing what he did? So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains that it was not because of what he did, it's how he did it. Yes, he did it with swiftness. He did it with alacrity. He did it with due diligence. He did it because he was on his game. That's why. That he had great joy to fulfill the desire of God. He woke up early in the morning and did it in a diligent, swift manner with great speed. So now the question begins, okay, well, that was Abraham, that he did it with great swiftness. I'm not Abraham, and I'm not a Kohen. Where does that leave me? And the truth is, why is it so important, swiftness? I mean, if you get the job done, isn't that the most important thing? And if you weren't on your game 100%, 98%, but you did it. So why is it so important? That we go over to Tanya, to the Alter Rebbe. In chapter 26 of Sefer Shabbat, and he says the following: we ought to set the following cardinal principle in stone. When speaking of victory over a physical obstacle, such as a case of two individuals are wrestling with each other, each striving to throw the other, if one is lazy and sluggish, he will easily be defeated and thrown, even though he may be stronger than the other. Is it exactly in the conquest of one's evil nature? It is impossible to conquer it with laziness and heaviness, which originate in sadness and in the heart that is dulled like a stone, but rather with alacrity, swiftness on your game, which derives from joy and from the heart that is free and cleansed from any trace of worry and sadness in the world. Wow. Now we're getting somewhere. Alacrity is important because it's not the size of the man up in the fight, but it's the size of the fight in the man or the woman, right? Success in life, of being able to deal with negativity within us, to strive beyond the human condition, is only when we're not sluggish, when we're not lazy, when we're not a little not on our game, when we don't have alacrity. When we have that swiftness, when we have the alacrity, then we are truly able to serve God and to be able to do right from wrong. That's how important it is, having alacrity. Because the evil inclination is very, very wise. An old fool, actually, but very cunning, not wise. Sorry, very cunning. So you got to be on your game. You got to be diligent in order that you can win life's battles. So what we see over here, the importance of alacrity. Now the problem is, only the Kohen has it by nature. And Abraham, well, come on, I'm not an Abraham. So where do I fit in with all of this? With that, we have the teachings of the Maimonides. Maimonides tells us not only the tribe of Levi, where the Kohanim come from, but anyone who inhabits the world, whose spirit generously motivates him or her, and understands their wisdom to set themselves aside and stand before God to serve him and minister to him and to know God, proceeding justly as God made him, removing from the neck the yoke of the many reckonings which people seek. He is sanctified as the Holy of Holies. God will be his portion and heritage forever and will provide them what is sufficient for him in this world, like he provides for the priests and the Levites. And thus David declared, God is my lot, my portion. You are my cup. You support my lot. In other words, we all can become that Kohen. We all can become the Kohen and have that alacrity. Okay, that's wonderful. But the Kohen has it in their DNA. Abraham is a holy individual. So I could choose, where am I going to get it from? How am I going to get it? So the Rebbe explains a beautiful idea over here. And he says, there's a place inside in every single one of us that is the yechida, the essence of our soul, that is always awake to be touched in the service of God, touched to transcend the human condition, ready and willing and able at any given moment to strive above. And that's where the alacrity, the swiftness comes from. See, we all want to do good. But sometimes we want to do good because it feels good. Sometimes we want to do good because we're afraid of the opposite if we don't do good, right? What will be of me, right? But there's a deeper part in us that wants to do good, as the Rebbe explains. There's a deep part in the human soul to which the concept of sleep is foreign. This is the essence of the soul, as explained in Kabbalah. There's a tiny godly spark, and this spark is integrated into the spark of creation that is called the Yechida. As it is stated, I sleep, yet my heart is awake. Heart here referring to the essence and the core of the heart, which is constantly awake by every Jew, which sleep does not apply. What does that mean? It means it's always ready. It's a deep part, but it's always ready to be touched. And this is the idea that anybody can serve like a Kohen. What do you mean everybody can serve like a Kohen? That deep part of our soul is not ready to serve because it makes me feel good, or because I'm afraid of the punishment, or I want the reward. That deep part in us wants to serve just because it wants to be connected to the truth. It wants to be connected to God. It wants to be connected to reality. And when you touch that, naturally what will come from it is a connection swiftly. Connection with due diligence. Will come from there that you're on your game naturally. Because when you really sense connection, it comes easy. It comes swiftly. You're not ecking and becking. You're not, I'll get to it. No. When you really feel connected. Not connected for something. Not for the gain of the connection, because that's our real connection. You really feel, everything comes easy. Think about human relations. There's some human relations that are difficult and weighs us down. And there's others, when we feel the real connection to do for the other, not a thought. It's not a burden. Not thinking about what you're going to gain from it. Oh, she'll love me more. He'll do for me as a result. No, the thought's not there. Just because you feel the deep connection. So whatever it is, it's such an easy thing to do. Swiftly, alacrity, because it shows on that deep connection. So likewise, if we have a real, truly deep connection with God, which we all do, it's the DNA of our soul. It's the achida of our soul. It's there. There's just got other layers on top that we have to get through and recognize that it's there. Just like the Kohen, in our neshama, it's there. And therefore, when we recognize that, and we sense the real connection to God Almighty, there isn't a thing that is an obstacle. There isn't something that, okay, I'll get to it. God, I'll pray soon. I'll give charity soon. But in the meantime, I'm busy with my thing. You're not really connected. But when you're really connected, it just comes swiftly. So the beautiful thing here is when you do that thing for Hashem swiftly with alacrity, same word, with due diligence, with on your game, and it's so easy, it's because it's coming from the depth of your soul. We all have it, and we all need to find it. And this then is the message for all of us. And this is, we are on the eve of Gimel Tammuz, as the Rebbe's Sicha, the Rebbe's message, that we are in a generation that in a certain way we're the heels of Mashiach, because we are on the lowest level, but yet the lowest can reach the highest point. The lowest is connected to the highest, and the highest is Yechida. And in Yechida, when we truly sense that I am who I am as a Jew, and that I have that capability of connecting as a Jew to God in that essential manner, with a real sense of connection, whatever God needs, it's our privilege and our pleasure, as we always say. And this is what the Rebbe says, that we have that capability of being the last generation before Mashiach, of being able to touch that place within us. And furthermore, we're capable of touching others. Not only do we have that place in us that we can touch, but we're capable in our generation to touch others very deeply. Sometimes in just a simple word, sometimes just a simple kindness, a sincere, beautiful way to embrace another. We can touch beyond what we can imagine. And that's what we need to do. Reach out. We're shluchim. We're emissaries of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem. We're emissaries of the Rebbe to bring goodness, kindness to this world, another mitzvah to this world, to bring ultimately the final redemption through Mashiach. I want to thank everybody for joining. Reminder, Tuesday night we have a very special broadcast for Gimel Tammuz. Wednesday night and Thursday, a whole day of learning. We'll be putting up the stuff and we'll keep you all focused. And most importantly for Gimel Tammuz, 26th yahrzeit of the Rebbe, we should make sure that we all write upon to the Rebbe a letter so we have our personal connection with the Rebbe. Have a good evening and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Question: how can Shabbos be before Yom Kippur? Isn't Yom Kippur could never be in a Sunday? I thought.
And then the times of the temple, it could be.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, folks. Be well.